bisschen tief gewesen, ne?
Ja, ein bisschen tief.
Kannst du noch Wasser trinken?
Aber
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vishnupada Paramhansa Parivrajacharya Ashta Saraswati Srimad Bhajanarananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Viviti Pandacharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Gaur Krimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvada Prashana Nirvishesha Srimati Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we are reading from Canto 4 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 23, entitled Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home. Text 10. Please repeat after me. Bhagavad Dharminaha Sadho Shraddhaya Yatataha Sada Bhakti Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Tata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhava Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Tata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhava. Please recite.
Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Yatata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat
Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Yatata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Yatata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat
Johannes?
Bhagavad Dharmina Sadhu Shraddhaya Yatata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat
Bhagavad Dharminaha. One who executes devotional service. Sadhu of the devotee. Shraddhaya with faith. Yatataha endeavoring. Sada always. Bhakti devotion. Bhagavati unto the personality of Godhead. Brahmani the origin of impersonal Brahman. Ananya Vishaya firmly fixed without deviation.
Firmly fixed without deviation.
Abhavat
Became.
Translation in perfect by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation reads as follows. Maharaj Prithu thus engaged completely in devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to principles 24 hours daily. Sorry, I'll read that again. Maharaj Prithu thus engaged completely in devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to principles 24 hours daily. Thus, his love and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, developed and became unflinching and fixed. Purport. The word Bhagavad Dharminaha indicates that the religious process practiced by Maharaj Prithu was beyond all pretensions. As stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 2, Dharma prochita kaitavotra. Religious principles, which are simply pretentious, are actually nothing but cheating. Bhagavad Dharminaha is described by Veera Raghava Acharya as Nivritta Dharmena, which indicates that it cannot be contaminated by material aspiration. As described by Srila Rupa Goswami, Anya Vilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmani Navatam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. When one who is not inspired by material desires and is not contaminated by the processes of fruitive activity and the empiric speculation fully engages in the favorable service of the Lord, his service is called Bhagavad Dharma or pure devotional service. Did I lose volume or what happened? Yes, it's back, thank you. In this verse, the word Brahmani does not refer to the impersonal Brahman. Impersonal Brahman is a subordinate feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And since impersonal Brahman worshippers desire to merge into the Brahman effulgence, they cannot be considered followers of Bhagavad Dharma. After being baffled in his material enjoyment, the impersonalist may desire to merge into the existence of the Lord, but a pure devotee of the Lord has no such desire. Therefore, a pure devotee is really Bhagavad Dharmi. It is clear from this verse that Maharaj Prithu was never a worshipper of the impersonal Brahman, but was at all times a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavati Brahmani refers to one who is engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee's knowledge of the impersonal Brahman is automatically revealed, and he is not interested in merging into the impersonal Brahman. Maharaj Prithu's activities in devotional service enabled him to become fixed and steady in the discharge of devotional activities, without having to take recourse to karma, jnana or yoga. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutha Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamsya Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasarane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashate Sacharane Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Panchatattvatmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktyavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktakam Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratashe Namah Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadraya Subhadrabhyam Jagannathaya Te Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the text and translation once again. Bhagavad Dharmina Sarvo Shraddhaya Tata Sada Bhakti Bhagavati Brahmane Ananya Vishaya Bhava. Maharaj Prithu thus engaged completely in devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to principles 24 hours daily. Thus his love and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, developed and became unflinching and fixed. So thank you very much, dear devotees, for being here, and please bestow your blessings so that I may be able to say a few words for my purification. So it's very interesting that in the translation there is this description of devotional service 24 hours and strictly adhering to devotional service, and how that makes one or helps one develop unflinching faith and become fixed. And of course, towards the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about this very famous verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anyabhilasha Shunyam. But the majority of the purport is about impersonalism and how a devotee is not interested in merging into the impersonal Brahman. So this I found very interesting also. You could say a fair bit of a contrast between the translation and purport. Now, and I was thinking, why? What is the essence of it? And there is this one lecture by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, and he speaks on Canto 3, Lord Kapila's teachings, and he talks about devotional service in three modes. The devotional service in mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And it's very interesting to see that the foundation of the devotional service rendered in any three mode is that you have a separatist attitude, which means that you have an interest separate from Krishna. And we also see for Mayavadis, that's also one of the major criteria how we understand a Mayavadi. A Mayavadi's or impersonalists' interest is separate from Krishna's interest. And it was very interesting that even in the mode of goodness, you can have a separate interest. One may think that, I have to rise to a mode of goodness. But Maharaj enlightened that even in the mode of goodness, if you perform devotional service, therefore still you can have an interest separate from Krishna. Would anyone like to guess why?
Still about our happiness.
Yes, it's still me-centered. I want to get out of the pangs of material fire and material existence, and I am suffering, and I want to relieve myself of suffering. That's still in the mode of goodness. Therefore, we come to a point that devotional service is actually based on love. And the devotional service, the very foundation of devotional service is pleasure of Krishna. And only then can our interest be in alignment with Krishna's interest. And it is and also in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is this text which resonates with what Prabhupada says towards the end of the purport. He says, Maharaj Prithu's activities in devotional service enabled him to become fixed and steady in the discharge of devotional activities without having to take recourse to karma, jnana or yoga. And it is something we have heard so many times that for a devotee, karma, jnana, yoga, these are not such important limbs. They may be steps or ladders to go to bhakti actually, but they are not. And I could recall this one pastime from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Was it Mukunda Datta, who was a little bit of a Jnana Mishra Bhakta, and he was taking prasad. And Lord Chaitanya went and he passed urine on the food that he was eating. And I once heard a lecture from Radhika Maharaj where he said that the fact that the Lord, and of course it was little Nimai, the fact that the Lord did this was to explain how Jnana Mishra Bhakti is like urine mixed with food. That's how abominable it is. And we also see in Canto 11, Krishna actually chose to instruct Uddhava because Uddhava was a Jnana Mishra Bhakta. And to elevate him to the platform of pure devotional service, Krishna gave him very special instructions because Krishna knew that he was physically going to leave the planet and his dear devotee Uddhava was going to stay back. So Krishna gave him the highest gift of pure devotional service. And in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita there is also this verse, Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakalya Shanta Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ata Eva Shanta, which means that whether it's the Bhukti, the one who wants to gratify the senses, Bhukti, Mukti. Mukti means the one who seeks liberation, Siddhi, the one who seeks the eightfold perfections. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami, the ones who desire these things, they are all Ashanta. Means they are unpeaceful. I don't know if unpeaceful is the word. They are not peaceful. Then who is peaceful? Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Atha Eva Shanta. The Krishna Bhakta is peaceful. And why is the Krishna Bhakta peaceful? Nishkam. Which means that the Krishna Bhakta does not have any desires. And of course, then one may think that what hope do I have? I mean, I am full of desires. I mean, I am definitely full of desires. And then what we have to really learn, Prabhupada says it is so difficult to become desireless. So what do we have to do? We have to dovetail our desire into Krishna consciousness. And many times we have said this. This word dovetail, does anyone remember where it comes from? It's actually coming from carpentry, this word dovetail. Because dovetail, the word itself, Prabhupada uses it a lot. It's become famous, I guess, in our movement from Prabhupada's usage of the term. And dovetail means what? Something that looks like a dove's tail, no? That is what it literally means. And in woodwork, those who are good at it, or carpenters, they would know that you have to cut two pieces of wood in the shape of a dove's tail to fix them together. So dovetail, essentially even in practice, means to bring Krishna's desire and my desire and fix them together. And that's what dovetail is. And if you really meditate on it, it's actually very beautiful. It does not mean that we nullify our personality, but it instead means that we align ourselves with Krishna's interest. And like Prabhupada, the 4 aphorisms that we have in our movement: purity is the force, books are the basis, utility is the principle, preaching is the essence. So utility is the principle. So whatever we are, we make do, best of a bad bargain, like they say. And in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 9, there is this very famous verse, Yagyartha Karmano Nyatra. In this verse, Prabhupada translates, and I think it's in the purport that he says, in the translation also there is this mention that one has to work for Vishnu. Yagya means sacrifice, Yagya means work, and one has to work for Vishnu. Otherwise, whatever you do is actually a cause of material bondage. And of course, this is something we've heard so many times. But what is interesting is that when we work for Vishnu or when we work for Krishna, this Anya Vilashta Shunyam is automatically revealed. So in this verse, one interesting terminology which is used is, and Prabhupada also actually uses it many times in the purport, is Bhagavad Dharminaha. And Bhagavad Dharminaha means who executes devotional service without pretension. Now this is very interesting, actually, to how Maharaj Prithu was executing religious process without pretension. And this is something that caught my attention. Because if you look at the history of Prithu Maharaj, he was a Shaktavish avatar, he had a very successful career as a king. And then what does he do? He gives up everything and he goes into the forest for austerity. But what is very interesting is gradually, even beyond the process of austerity, is a process of devotional service. And it is only now that there is a mention that he's becoming unflinching and fixed in the devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as to highlight that bhakti is actually the only process. And we see even in the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Karma Yoga, the Jnana Yoga, and in the middle there is the Bhakti Yoga. And it is said, and sometimes one may argue that maybe Jnana Yoga is the highest, that's why Bhakti Yoga is in the middle. But once I heard this example, that when you eat the sandwich, where is the best part? Yes, in the middle, right? Whether it's a jam or it's like a cucumber or salad leaves, the cheese, it's in the middle. So the best part is always kept in the middle, and therefore we also see in Bhagavad Gita also Bhakti Yoga is in the middle. And also another important word Prabhupada uses here in the purport is nivritta dharmena, which indicates that it cannot be contaminated by material aspirations. And I thought, because this verse Anyabhilashta Shunyam we often meditate upon, but to really meditate upon these two aspects of how devotional service can be has to be without pretension and without material aspirations. And of course, when we are living in the temple or practicing devotional service, so much can be lost in monotony, and it's so important to regularly evaluate, why am I doing this? What is the motivation? And of course, for many of us still, or even in the beginning stage, it is some kind of aspiration, a material aspiration, some kind of material comfort, some kind of material pretension. And it is okay, it is there, it is okay, but it is important to be awakened or to be aware of this and gradually work on the purification of our intention in Krishna consciousness. And Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's very nice. One of my favorite chapters is chapter 19 to 22. This whole section, it describes the creeper of devotional service. And it says, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karhodaya. The seed of devotional service is sown in the heart of an individual by the spiritual master. And what do you water it with? You water it with Shravanadi. So the process of hearing and chanting is very, very important. And we see Prithu Maharaj had his own history of austerities, but I was hearing this lecture by His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, where he mentioned actually that the biggest austerity for the younger generation is the austerity of chanting. He says Japa is an austerity. Why? Because if you can get a young person to sit in one place and complete his or her rounds attentively, wow, that's a job done. So, our austerity in this day and age in devotional service is actually chanting, proper chanting of the holy name. Now, I was also hearing these lectures in the past few days by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu, and also His Grace Dravida Prabhu. And they were talking about very similar topics. I mean, they were actually talking on different texts or verses, but then the topic was very similar. And they were saying how hearing and chanting is the fundamentals that we cannot sacrifice, regardless of how much service you have to do, regardless of what time you wake up, what time you sleep, regardless of wherever you are in life. Hearing and chanting is something you cannot sacrifice. And Vaisheshika Prabhu was saying how he has these 4 laws of book distribution. You know what? 4 laws? You remember them? Could you?
First one is get books.
To get books. Mm-hmm.
Then the second, the more you show, the more you sell. Is the third.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then there's one.
In any case, he was talking about his 4 laws of book distribution. And he was saying that whenever I talk about my 4 laws of book distribution, I always say that the fundamental of everything is hearing and chanting. So it's quite interesting. And there was this pastime of Srila Prabhupada, that once there was supposed to be a bombing in Calcutta. And Srila Prabhupada was in Calcutta. He was, of course, as usual, doing his hearing and chanting and translating his books. And it was declared an emergency and everyone was trying to leave the city. But Prabhupada said, it's fine, I will stay here and do my chanting and my hearing. So he actually stayed back in the city, which was supposed to be bombed, thinking that Krishna will protect me. Yeah, if Krishna wants me to be bombed, I will be bombed. Of course, that's very high level. But really shows that how much faith he had in Krishna's promise. Because Krishna promises, Pratigyata Govinda Name Bhakta Pranishati. Krishna promises that my devotee will never perish. And it is on the basis of Krishna's promise actually that we should render devotional service. And the word very often Prabhupada uses is Sudrida Mana. Sudrida means with unflinching faith, unflinching mind, we should render devotional service. And what will happen is that of course, rendering devotional service is actually based on very strong sadhana. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj in his lecture was talking about how sadhana, what is sadhana? If I ask you what is sadhana, how would you describe it? Ajay Krishna, how would you describe sadhana? It could be anything, spontaneous. Process. Mm-hmm.
And discipline.
Discipline, okay. And?
Practice.
Sorry, I think Amritavani, Anna.
Practice.
Practice, okay, Anna.
Regulation.
Regulation, got it?
Also the same thing.
Okay. Practice, yes. You had something to say?
Just saying regulated practice to attain a certain sadhana. So
Okay. Simon, what do you think? What is sadhana?
Yeah, I was also thinking about regular practice.
Mm-hmm. Johannes? Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. So sadhana, I don't remember if it's Vaisheshika Prabhu Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. They describe it as unbreakable habits. It's quite impactful how it's described. They didn't use, of course they talked about the process, the regulation, the practice, but sadhana is actually unbreakable habits. Means that when you have a sadhana, regardless of wherever you are, whatever you are doing, it will go on. That is actually what is sadhana. So when we say sadhana of good chanting, sadhana of reading, sadhana, which means that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, this will go on. This is the constant in your life. So it's quite nice actually. It also gives us an insight into how we look at sadhana, unbreakable habits. And of course we see Srila Prabhupada, whether he was in the not so ready bhajan kutir in Mayapur or living in the palatial manor, he went on. The sadhana went on. And also there is this very famous strong story we hear when Prabhupada was in Kumbh Mela. He took a cold shower actually to go for Mangala Arati. So sadhana that way is unbreakable practice, that regardless of whatever the circumstances are, you will go ahead and perform. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj in his lecture actually very nicely was talking about the danger of not going deeper. And I was thinking perhaps this could be our meditation on this text, because Prabhupada talks about strictly engaging in devotional service and how love and devotion is developed, and then this becomes unflinching and fixed. So the importance of going deeper in devotional service. So this is something we could meditate on. And also I would invite you maybe at the end of our discussion to share something about how to go deep in devotional service. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj has this one lecture. It's very interesting because here it says pretensions, and I could recall his lecture is getting a taste for devotional service through pretension. That's the lecture. So what are the dangers of not going deeper into devotional service? He first started off the lecture saying, going deeper into devotional service is not a luxury, and going deeper into devotional service is not an extracurricular. You understand? It's not a luxury. I may or may not. No, you have to. This is the whole process. If you practice bhakti or you practice devotional service, you just go deeper. It's a natural process that you go deeper and deeper. And what happens when we go deeper? We make richer experiences in Krishna consciousness or in the practice of bhakti. And it's also very nice actually. Prabhupada gives this example of a small fish in an ocean. Anyone remembers that example of a small fish in an ocean? So what happens is there is this turbulent ocean and a small fish can swim against the current, right? Against the wave. Can a big fish do it?
Yes.
Big fish, no.
Why?
Because the currents are so strong, the big fish gets it's really difficult. But for a small fish, it is way more easier actually to go against the current. If you look at the whole science of how it works, for a bigger fish, it takes more effort to move against the waves. But for a small fish, it is way easier to move against the wave. And why is this? Prabhupada describes, it's because the fish has taken shelter of the ocean. So even similarly, Prabhupada kind of draws this analogy that even in this material world, although it may be difficult to practice devotional service or practice the process of bhakti, it becomes easy when we take shelter of service. So, and also in one letter to Hamsadutta, Prabhupada wrote, he gave this example of there is a pot of milk, and if we keep adding water to it, in the end it will only be water and no more milk. So if in our practice of service, devotional service, or in our daily sadhana, if we do not aim to really work on the purification, what will happen? It's like adding water to milk. And in the end, there will be only water and no milk. Instead, what do we need to do? We need to boil. Prabhupada gives also this analogy in the same letter, that when you boil the milk, and many cooks know, when you boil the milk, it reduces, it becomes thick, condensed and sweet. And that's really like thick milk. So this practice of tapasya or austerity, which we perform in a way, or the yagya, the work we're performing, is devotional service. And that thickens the milk, and then what happens? There is more milk. And contrary to the other aspect where there is water instead of milk. So this is something perhaps we could meditate on, how we can go deeper in devotional service. And I was thinking, actually, Satyananda Maharaj very often gives this, he has given very often this example of the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the burnout zone. And where should we be?
Stretch zone.
Yes, stretch zone, in the middle, in the stretch zone. Because the comfort zone is, we think, okay, I can look at my phone and chant japa. That's way beyond comfort zone also, but that's still comfort zone because I'm doing what I like, but I'm also holding on to Krishna. And then we have the stretch zone, that little by little I think, okay, actually, let me actually sit down and not be looking at anything, but really close my eyes and hear Jai Shri Raghunath Baladev Jai Shri Gaurathai Ki. So this aspect actually, that to really understand what is this comfort zone, or stretch zone, and burnout zone. We know the comfort zone is where I do a little bit of Krishna consciousness, little bit of Maya. The burnout zone is that I push myself so much that I develop bitterness. So then one may think, how do I really evaluate where am I in devotional service? And the evaluation factor is taste. That if you do a service and you're not doing it for pleasing people, you're not doing it for how you are perceived, you're not doing it because your temple president told you to, or your bhaktan leader told you to, but you're doing this service because this just makes you so blissful, and it just gives you some taste, and that, with that kind of mindset, when we take some risk for Krishna and stretch ourselves a little bit, that is where we are in stretch zone. And now one may think, how do I know my capacity, and how do I know if I'm getting taste? This is why it's important to have well-wishers and counselors, and also a sense of community actually. I mean, unfortunately, of course, in our yatra, the whole counselor system is not so developed. But yeah, there are yatras where it's very strongly prevalent, and it's so important for the younger generation actually to adhere to this system. Because what happens is, a counselor, a well-wisher, or somebody who's guiding you, they will not only tell you like nice things, sometimes they will be like, yeah, but this is utterly wrong. And it will be a hard pill to swallow, but it's so good for us. And if we don't have devotees that we go to, and devotees who can be so, let's say, heavy. I mean, heavy is not even the word, but really unpleasant to our ego. If we don't go to devotees who are unpleasant to our ego, what happens then? We think, I can be my own guru. And then what happens then? Yeah, some speculation happens, and then it's just like a big khichdi in the end. So what we have to do is really, take shelter of seniors, take shelter of the process. Because naturally, actually, Krishna consciousness is such a process that you have to take shelter. Like the small fish takes shelter of the ocean. In the practice of bhakti or devotional service, we have to take shelter of the community, the seniors, and of service itself. So this is actually a very nice meditation on how we can deepen our service and to go deeper in devotional service. And I really liked how Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said that it's not an extracurricular, it's not a luxury, it has to happen. And if you feel like you're not going deeper in devotional service, get a checkup done, because it's a natural process, but at the same time it's a process that needs some effort on our part. So that kind of an approach is very important. And we see how Prithu Maharaj himself, he transgressed all these different, or he completed all these phases of life to come to the path of devotional service, to become fixed and unflinching. So this is something we have to really keep as a goal. I mean, you cannot just dilly-dally around, living in the temple or being in devotional service. You have to really set goals for yourself. That this is how I want to, some of us who like writing, really write down. Because, outside in the world, this is what they do. If you have some academic goals or some goals in life, you write it down. That this is my mission statement. This is my goal in, 3 years or something. And it is a similar approach we can even have for devotional service or in bhakti, that, okay, so this is my goal of how I really want to progress in devotional service. At least have some concrete goals, So to develop taste actually is so important, because I was thinking, if you look at some devotees that are around, they are probably doing the service because there is taste. If you look at Ramakanta Prabhu, he comes every evening like a clock. He's doing this every evening. And if there is nobody is asking him to. He's not obligated to. But why is he doing it? He's doing it out of taste, out of a sense of duty, out of a sense of sadhana. This is his sadhana actually. So this commitment, and you will see it's such a line, because it starts from good sadhana, regular service, developing taste, and then commitment. So, and I look at like Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu. He doesn't have to do this. He's old enough, he has his own family to run. But what is he doing? He's doing service because there's taste. And yesterday actually I was in the altar with Nayana Manjari Madhuri. And when you get old, it is difficult. I mean, she's not so old, but still, And she was dressing Jagannath Baladev, our smaller Chota deities. And when she got up, I could see it was so difficult for her to get up the floor. And I was thinking, actually, she doesn't have to do this. And I was thinking, if when I reach her age, will I do it? Will I really put my body in such difficulty to serve the Lord. And the test or the preparation time for the younger generation is now, actually. For us, it is so important to take that extra step to really be out there, do something for Krishna, like have this one service I really like, and this is my offering to Prabhupada's movement. So that you can build on it and develop such taste that even when you are older and when your limbs are not working fine, you will still do it. And even if you look at Mandali Prabhu, like he's so deeply into this whole ritualistic aspect, into deity worship, that he has his own physical ailment, but he still shows up. And like all the younger pujaris, he guides them also. So really we have to, and we have a lot of examples around, we only need to look, we just need to look around. Even Ingeborg actually, if you look at her, she doesn't need to do it. But from her heart she wants to do it because for her this is service. So really, of course, that the different examples come in different shapes, sizes and forms, different circumstances, but the essence is to find taste in service, and this is something we have to already start preparing, to find this one service that we can really develop taste in, so that even when our limbs are not working, we can still do it, And the preparation time is now. Like really, when we are young, this is and Prahlad Maharaj in Canto 7, he says, Kaumaram, what's that? Yeah, Kaumaram Acharit Pragya, isn't it? Yeah. In Canto 7, Prahlad Maharaj says that this young age is the best time to practice Krishna consciousness. So all your discoveries, you have to make it at this age. And if you look at Prabhupada's disciples, they were young and that's when they figured out what's their commitment and what's their service to Srila Prabhupada. So similarly, even for us, this is the best time to have the most rich experience in Krishna consciousness, and this is the best time to go deeper in rendering devotional service. So with this note, I think we can wrap up our discussions. Grantarashana Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If there are any comments or questions that you would like to raise.
Thank you, Mataji. One question was concerning the pretension aspect.
Yeah.
You were saying should not be pretentious. What does it actually mean for us? And then there's this other devotees I heard also say there's strong opinions on both sides. Fake it till you make it, or no, never do that. That's the worst thing you can do. What is your perspective, and what does it mean to pretend?
Yes, very nice question, thank you. Actually, it would be also nice to hear this lecture from Bhakti Tita Maharaj on pretension. And it is true that there is this two aspects. One says, and also Prabhupada I think has this quote that if you are not a pure devotee, act like one, then you will become one. And also some say, but there is also this big chance of fall down, of burnout and all of these, pride and all of these things. And I think that's why community is very important, or having a group of people who you can be transparent with and who you allow to rectify you. That's very important. Because of course in our movement also there are several examples where individuals took roles of leadership and they thought they had to be like Prabhupada. They had to be the Prabhupada of the movement. And then we saw it didn't really go well. And I think this is, this thing, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Who said this? Lord, anyway, somebody said it, somebody important. So the thing is, when we concentrate all our power just within us, we are going to get corrupted. Therefore, it's very nice to give the power over us to the Guru, to some Gurujan, which means elderlies, to some seniors, mentors, counselors, so that we are, the path that we are going is, and actually I was last Saturday speaking with Akandadali Prabhu, and he said, because I was telling him about, how I was contemplating moving out of the temple and out of the ashram. And he was telling me about how in the manor, there, I don't know if it's still there used to be a rule that if a devotee is thinking of moving out or in of the temple, changing of the ashram, changing of service, changing of location or whatever, the person would sit down with three people, three brahmanas, and all in the same room at the same time. So you sit and there are three people sitting with you who you trust. You can pick who these three are. And then you present what your struggles are, and then they give you their opinion, not separately. So this aspect of, Bhakti Siddha Maharaj says that, if you think of it logically, what are we capable of? Nothing. In the age of Kali Yuga, I can speak I'm the laziest rascal possible. And if there was a day I could go without chanting, I would probably go without chanting because my mind goes everywhere and I have no taste, So, personally, we are capable of nothing. But still, we still do it. Why? In a way, it's just pretension. I chant nicely, although I cannot. Why? Because someday I hope I will be able to chant nicely. So in a way, it's like you keep practicing and you keep faking it till you make it. Even when it comes to, like sometimes I think that when I'm doing pujari service, there is so much going on in the head and the heart, and I'm thinking, oh my God, why am I doing this service? And I try to do it at least in some way nicely, and then I think, I shouldn't even be doing this given my head and heart, but I'm still doing it. It's pretension. Why? With a prayerful mood that, okay, hopefully the service itself will purify us. So devotional service, although, we can never start from a pure stage. We can never start with a stage where we are ready for it. We always start from a stage where, the service itself has to purify us. That's just how it is. So therefore, you keep doing it till, I'm sure you also had this experience when you were going out on Sankirtan, you didn't start off as the best book distributor or something, In the beginning, it was even approaching one person is difficult, but you still muster courage and you got this, and then you go and do it. Why? Because just by doing it, it finally dawns upon you, okay, and Krishna gives you the mercy, okay, this person is endeavoring. And also, of course, in the Upadeshamrita, it is said, endeavoring with confidence. So this pretension aspect, I think that is what it would mean when you render this fake it till you make it kind of a thing. But externally or even internally, you're really trying, but what is important is to be introspective. If I think, for example, if I do the pujari service nicely and I think, oh, I am the best pujari, then that's doomsday, actually. If I'm not introspective and I don't know what's going on inside me and I don't know the mistakes I'm making, and I think just because everyone thinks I'm a good pujari, then you have no hope, or I have no hope. So this point of introspection is very important. And also to have certain seniors in our lives with whom we can be vulnerable, and of course these individuals we should be very careful when we choose. And where we can put our trust and we can be very transparent, even your dark sides, and even, if a certain kind of service you are doing and it kind of gives you a certain feel that, oh yeah, I think I got this, go and tell your senior that this is how I'm thinking. So, and the senior will maybe sometimes encourage you and sometimes probably, beat your mind up why would you think like that, but this and that. So the aspect of rendering devotional service with pretension would mean really to do something for the outwardly nature and not be introspective. And then what happens gradually doesn't last. You fall down over time, trying to become what you're not. Whereas if you sincerely practice, hoping for mercy, being introspective, having guidance of seniors, then this sort of so-called pretension can actually lead you to some advancement. And there will be a stage, pretending, one day it will become real. But the most important aspect is to be introspective. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's just somehow this word pretension is not nice to hear, right? Nobody wants to be pretender.
Yes.
So, but still, we're in this position where somehow, but it feels like maybe we can, substitute it with trying or practicing.
Sure.
In this way. It's kind of I feel so. Basically, the difference, like you're saying, it's either it's the outward, you perform for outwardly goals, and that's when it becomes like potentially believed to fall down. But on the contrary, if you're more introspective, that's when it becomes helpful.
Yes.
Right, that's what you.
Mm.
And I think also like the faith, it's dependent on the faith. So if the faith is real, you have to kind of check if, because there's the statements and we just read also yesterday that if you just perform devotional service, then everything will be taken care of. You don't have to worry about anything. You will progress and go back to God in this life even. Right? So it has to be this faith, right? And if there is like genuine faith, somehow we have to check if our faith is genuine, or if it's. How can we check that?
Yeah, well, I mean, faith is such a big topic in itself, but also, we were talking about on Saturday. I was at this sangha with which was hosted by Lokapalni Mataji and Harikatha Prabhu, and I was invited to speak, and I spoke about change because it's something I am undergoing now. So we spoke about change, and then we spoke about Draupadi's story of how, she was holding on to the sari with one hand and she cried out to Krishna, Govinda did not come, and then she had to really let go. And it was such a risk actually. So to, the faith aspect came up through discussion. It was a very nice environment, very beautiful environment. Devotees were really opening up and very deep discussions about faith. And faith in a way is also tested in little risks that you take. That's also. Faith is tested in how much you yourself take shelter and how much you believe that whatever Krishna does, he's doing it for my benefit. So faith and then Akandalari Prabhu made a comment actually. He said the word Shraddha is important because it means in a way trust. So we have to trust Krishna. And how do you evaluate what my faith is like? It is when you are in adverse circumstances, what is your mood, Because one thing is to tolerate adverse circumstances and the other is to accept it, thinking that actually Krishna is my best friend, why will he give me anything which is not good for me? And of course that's a very high level, but then what to do? You've got to practice. Then it will manifest in itself. And also, how to really get faith. And it's one question I kind of ask many times, like, how do you really get faith? And again, this aspect of hearing and chanting. I mean, there are some standardized answers we get, but then it's so true. One is associating with those who have faith, and the other is by hearing and chanting. And for me, to be honest, I like standardized answers, but it's just not so satisfying because I'm like, okay, tell me what to do, and I will really, do this so that I get faith. And for me, on a personal level, I felt like practice was something that really helped me get real faith. In the sense that, of course, this is one question I always struggle with so much. How do you really get faith? Because if you think, faith is the basis of everything we want to do in devotional service. So it is important to really cultivate this faith. And how do you cultivate this faith? And I think it's also very individual faith, how you develop it. And for me, on a personal level, it's by action, by doing. One is, doing services, but at the same time, really, if there is some circumstance in my life, and of course in all our lives we'll have enough, some big, some small. In every circumstance, I kind of make it a test of my faith in a way that I really evaluate how much am I relying on Krishna in this. One is how much am I relying that he will take care of this, and it can be even in the little things, it can be in and I really feel for me in a personal level, it is only through practice that my faith is getting strengthened. Like to time and again, make attempts, not even make attempts, just understand how this life situation or whatever I'm doing. And sometimes you can even make attempts, like have these little prayers to Krishna. And also through this Pujari service, at least for me on a personal level, so many realizations, because there are so many things you're not capable of, and once you really, especially when you dress Lord Nityananda, it's very difficult. I think a lot of Pujaris struggle with Lord Nityananda a lot. And one day, and like on Balram Jayanti, I had this experience that with Lord Chaitanya, he's just so merciful, you know. He's a no problem boy. He can dress him so nicely. And Lord Nityananda, he was just giving me such a hard time. And in the end, you know what I had to do? I had to hold his lotus feet and be like, please help. And then it was okay. And for me, that's faith, you know. That these are not just dolls, it's not just wood, metal or whatever, this is their lordship right there. So and this is just an example, but you know, through these kind of instances, when we practice, because I could have just been like, I mean, not to say that I did the right thing or something, but you know, it's just how Krishna consciousness helps you also change your consciousness. If, you know, I was not properly situated, or I'm still not properly situated, but somehow Krishna gave me mercy at that time to have a proper consciousness. But like other times when my consciousness is not proper, what would I do? I would try and have my way with the Lord, you know. I would be like, no, but you have to wear this. No, but sometimes when you're doing this, and any time, whether, whatever, you know, in book distribution, with cooking, with painting, I'm also sure, or whatever, you know, sometimes if Krishna, you know, doesn't allow you, you cannot do it. And then you have to pray, take shelter, and have that faith. And when you see they are so present in these little moments, then how can they not be present in the big moments, you know? So for me, on a personal level, faith only comes through practice, through these little things. And this is one example. But also, like, sometimes, you know, like, there are little things for which I kind of really pray. And for me, then gradually, and also one more thing really helps is, I think it was Keshav Maharaj who said this, but then I started kind of applying it. He says, look back at how far you've come. And also sometimes when I look back at how far I've come in life generally, and how my life has evolved, and now I'm here and however, then I see actually Krishna did the best for me, you know. And he never let me down. He's my ever well-wisher and my best friend. So therefore there is no doubt, and then the faith gets strengthened. So these are like two aspects. One for me on a personal level, by practice, and also again by reflection. That how far Krishna has really supported me, so how can I not have faith? So, yeah, that would be my perception of it. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Anandamurti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Devasri Radhika Devi Dasi. understood.